So thank you. I'm Ervin Hegedüs. I'm a CRS developer, and I try to help to maintaining the mode security code as well. And in my company, I started to work a few mode security related applications. And let me show you something. This is a dashboard. There is no any kind of product, open source or commercial product, where we can check what happens on our servers. We use Mode Security 2 and Mode Security 3 as well. And we explicitly want to know what happens on the servers. And this includes not only the disrupted rules, for example, if some transaction has blocked, and of course, a blocked transaction will appear in the audit log. But what happens if there is just a triggered rule which doesn't have any disrupted rule, but we want to know about? Or, for example, maybe you never see that, but in many thousands of logs, just find 2 lines with some error when the engine couldn't log the audit log. That means if the engine wants to write into the audit logs, it wants to make a log file, and the logging was failed. So, and Mode Security also records this. So this is the dashboard. I don't want to show too many things because it's a very early version. But I would like to talk about how the log parsing works, because it's very important. So and this is my presentation. Okay. So I would like to talk in this presentation about the IDs, the goals and motivations, internal operations, so how the log builds, how the log buildings in both engines, for a few examples and future plans. Not this. Okay, so as I said, we use Mode Security on more and more servers, Apache and Nginx, and of course we run more very unpleasant false positives. The demand is process logs from a custom dashboard, and we want to show the logs. Both developers and administrators who can check the WAF results. For example, there is a developer of an application, and for a request he gets 403, or maybe he gets 200, but wants to check no any other rules was triggered. Then we want to make a tool into this hand to check these results. Collect virtual hosts. So there are many virtual hosts on many distributed servers, and we want to collect all logs. Just a side note, maybe you heard about MSC PyParser, and I make HTTP PyParser. It's also a parser which parses both Nginx and Apache configurations. So it means the HTTP PyParser can recognize the whole Apache configuration, and you can get many informations. After the presentation, I can show you an example in real life. Collect information about server configuration, including log paths. It's very important. CRS setup, for example, kernel level, and Mode Security customization. For example, is there any audit log? Is there any custom settings? For example, if you want to know about size limit or any other. So we can collect all the information. Which log? There are 2 logs, the audit log and error log, and we choose the second one, the error log, because we need only warning lines too, not just the disruptive lines, right? And the question was how to transport the logs to the dashboard app. On the fly, now on the dashboard, it works few virtual hosts. For example, the Mode Security.digitalwave.who, maybe you know about this site. I'm a Debian maintainer, and I'm packaging mod security, libmod security, mod security connectors for Nginx and CRS. And it's a static site, so no any dynamic content. And these lines goes to the dashboard on the fly. And the other way is copy the logs and load them in place. So I just copy every day a log and load into the database. First step, I faced the problems, LogParser and those limitations. I will talk about this topic. For example, truncated fields. Maybe you run into this problem. Falsified data. Maybe it's a new thing for everyone, but maybe it will be an interesting thing. Differences between the Nginx. So Nginx and Apache makes the log by different way. Portability, what if we want several different applications? For example, usually we use Python, but sometimes we use PHP. And I talked about if I can make some bindings for any languages. And performance, it only may occur in extreme cases, but I want to care about this. So it's not as trivial as it seems at first. Falsify data. Okay, so let's check this request. It's a curl request and a post request, and minus capital X means it's a multi-part request. And see what's the name of the multi-part data. It begins with mark and the file def/null, file line -2, it's nonsense. ID, it's a P, also nonsense. MSG is empty. And the other, and let me know the file is again. So there are two file fields.
You're not in the audio. And there is
sorry.
There is a pointer there.
Okay.
If you take a look at the table,
this?
Yeah. You press
Just
the middle and there is a...
okay. Yeah. Thanks. Sorry. So here's the file field 1, file field 2. That's it. And see what happens in the log. Mod security warning. It's now everyone see this pattern. Matched trace pattern from attack, something at our names, and here is the file once, here is the file first, and here is the file third. What is the correct? Okay, so the last of us. So the last occurrence of the file, and it's important the whole pattern. We want to check the whole pattern. Okay, I'm talking about later this. Yes, and fortunately later this won't appear. For example, if you want to log the matched war, because the matched war in both versions, like Mod Security 3 and Mod Security 2, also encoded in encoded form, so it's no problem. So this is the falsified data. It has a side effect, because consider there is an XSS or an SQL injection attack through the application, and the WAF blocked that request and write the attack into the log. What happens if your log parser or your logs stash collects the data and a beginner administrator likes this XSS and click on them? Okay. So goals and motivation, parse the lines of the log files into a structure, and the structure contains as much details as possible. And on the dashboard, help with row filtering and making exclusions later. And for example, add access to site developer. This is what I talked about. For example, if a developer works on a project and wants to see the log results. Okay, indicate if the line is wrong, for example, is truncated or missing some mandatory fields. Doing it as fast as possible, of course, and can be moved to other platforms, for example, from Python to PHP or any other. And with minimal dependency, it's just my ID, so I don't want to use any too much third-party libraries. So the project was libmst LogParser. It's available on GitHub. The license is AGPL, so maybe it's a bit weird, but we choose this one license. So it's written in C, so therefore we can use it C, C++, Go, or Rust application. And by default, it has Lua, PHP, Python, and Ruby languages as well. No other libraries needed. For example, no any kind of regex or glib or any others. I try to use standard string functions. For example, str, or because the compiler can optimize these functions. There is only one main function. This is the parse. It expects a line of string, length of the string, type of the line, which could be actually Apache or Nginx, and an MPA structure. This is necessary only in C. Bindings, using of bindings are more easier. It needs only the line and the type of the line, and the functions fills the MP structure. Bindings return the structure. I will show an example later. And there is a helper function, read MSC log error. This is because the C is not easy to handle the arrays. So this function is helps to the bindings or in C application. Okay, it was important. So first, I had to understand how the log's building. It's very important, and it's not easy as well. So logs are written through the web server. It means the application, the engine, for example, the module, the mode security module in case of Apache, builds a log, and the log has written through the core Apache, not the module. The length of the log is limited, almost in all cases, and the code writer decided which parts could be truncated. So this is the core parts in case of Apache and Nginx too. So it starts always with a date. A security 2 is new in mode security. Maybe you saw the commit in the last version of mode security 2. It's a PID and TID, client first and client second. The client first is part of the core log. With the second client, the mode security part starts with this. In case of Nginx, with the bold text, it's core part of the log, and it's finished with these fields, without brackets and just a plain. Just a plain text. These parts are always present, so each line contains them and must contains these fields. And therefore, these are not truncated ever. And generated by the core logger, yes, and the rest generated by the module, the rest part. And here is the rest parts, for example, in the Apache. As I said, the second client is the first field. It's never truncated. Mode security warning, this is the message. Message can be truncated. Here is the part with red is the message part without string warning. So the warning is not a strict part of the message. And the other part is can be maximum length of 252 bytes. And if it's more, the length is more than this, then the module will truncate the text at 252 bytes and append a space and 3 dots. The part with the black is metadata. This is the file, line, ID, MSG, version, tag, and others. We will talk about later. And the brown, which is green here, maybe, appended and the add process, and this can be truncated ever. The metadata in the module parts, in case of Apache, is the file, line, ID, MSG, where tag. This is an example. it's important that it has a strict order, and the order is mandatory. This is the file, second is the line, then an ID, rev, MSG, data, severity, where, maturity, accuracy, and tag. Also, it's important information that fields are optional. It means if a rule does not have the mentioned value, for example, CRS doesn't use maturity and accuracy, right? So in case of Apache, these fields won't appear in the log. It's important because in Nginx, it has a different behavior. So the data value can be also maximum length of 512. If it's longer, then it's truncated and appended the ... and the closing bracket tail. And the tag can be there many times, as you know. And finally, in case of the Apache log, this is the tail part. It's a three field, the host name, URI, and unique ID. And they can also can't be truncated. So if a transaction finished, the module concatenate these parts into the log. So coarse parts come from the server, the first fields. Leading text, client ABC, most security always present. Added the message, which is truncated, which can be truncated. Added the metadata, maximum length of leading text, message, and metadata can be up to 1024 bytes. It's also a limitation, right? And this is the reason why you see a truncated fields like this. So opening bracket and a V. Opening bracket, tag, lang, and that's the end. Okay, let's see what happens in Nginx. The red text is the message here with a very strict content. See later. The part with black is the metadata. It's very similar like in the case of Apache. And the part with brown also append at the end of the process. And it's very similar like Apache. The metadata also have a strict order, file, line, ID, etc. Fields are not optional. It means if a rule doesn't have the mentioned version, for example, maturity, then the default value will be 0. So it's, I think, a bit falsified because I didn't put the value of the rule, the maturity with 0, but the module will append this value. So I think it's not so correct. And you can't decide it's a valid value or just a default value. That way you can be max length of 200 bytes. If it's longer, then it's truncated and appended, the end characters omitted. This is the default text. So I think it's more correct than just truncated the field, because you can be sure that this value is truncated. So there is a more important information about the truncate event. And the tag can be there anytime also. And this is the tail part of the Nginx log. It's very similar. The URI field has a limit with 200 characters. That's it. And this is how Nginx concatenates the module. Core parts come from the server, leading text, most security warning always present. In case of lib security 3, there are only 2 types of messages. In case of Apache, there are many types of messages. And the message in the case of Nginx, it's a very strict format. As I said, the added message is operator, and this is the operator which the rule used. With parameter is a constant string. A param, which is a parameter which against the operator, and this is the variable key and the variable value. So there are 4 dynamic content in the log, and this can be useful because if you want to make an exclusion for the rule, these 4 information can be very valuable. Param limited to 200 and value limited in 100 characters. Later, it's added the metadata. Maximum length of leading text and message can be length up to 2 kilobytes. And unfortunately, this is the one place only in case of libnginx, libsecurity3, where there is no information about the truncate. But I have never seen any log lines like this. After that, the tail part added, and so the advantage of the libsecurity3 is no random truncated field. Or if there are any, they are marked explicitly. Okay, splitting the line. So challenge, split the line into the parts above. I choose this method, find the left border of the message. It's easy. First mode security occurrence it. That's the message part. Find the right border. You can remember the fails data. Look for the last file, and this is important pattern: a space and bracket, file, space, and a quoted mark. And the pattern in the line, I listed here them. And this is what I said in previously presentation, that later in the data, this pattern is hexa encoded, so we don't care about this. So this pattern, the last pattern of this occurrence, is the real file pattern what we are looking for. tar stairs with the fixed hostname pattern, and we can parsing the metadata, and this is the trick. The right border of the next field is the left border of current, and step back with 2 characters, and I allow the search method to find this shortest possible pattern. For example, if the algorithm recognizes 3 characters of the pattern, then we can say, okay, this is what we are looking for. So we can find the truncated V, this is the version, or a T, this is the tag, and truncated tag fields, and so on. And due to the strict order, they exclude each other from occurring. For example, V is the shortened form of version, and only one conflict can be there, the single M character, which can be MSG or maturity, but MSG is before the data, so it's never truncated. Okay, getting more information. As I said, there are many kind of messages in case of mode security 2. For example, mode security warning, mode security access denied, mode security rule error. Maybe you have seen this before many times. For example, PCR limit what is the correct accurate message? PCR limit exceeded. Yeah. Okay. Here is it. And some of them, for example, the PCR limit exceeded, modify the structure. So after the message, the first field is the ID, almost with minus sign, and then a file and line, and there is no spaces between the fields. So the parser, what I made, also recognize these lines too. Get the reason, pattern match, why the pattern matched, operand and target. This makes exclusions easier. Show the truncated field if any, and mark all errors. Truncated field, missing fields, disk was full, for example, and similar. And here is the example. Only this 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 lines, and just passed an argument the whole log, and it will be produces a usable and a very visible structure. So this is the structure, what I get after the parser parses the line. This is the length of line. How long is the line? Is this the mode security line or not? It's 1 or 0. It's broken. Now it's 0 because it's not broken. The parser gives back the date in ISO format and date in epoch format. Also, it has a client. It's the mode security client field in case of Apache. And in case of Nginx, it's the tail part of the log. A mode security message. This is the whole message field. The message length. How long is the message? If there is a denied, for example, access denied, the message will be here. The reason I just cut this substring, the operator G matched 5. Operator and operand will be filled only in case of Nginx. This is the target name, the TX inbound anomaly score. Target value, there is no any information about in case of Apache. The rule error only if any kind of, for example, what I said in previously, the PCR limit execution. This is the file and line, ID, rev, it's empty, MSG, data, version, and so on. These are the tags. If tags can be any time. The hostname, URI, unique ID, and if there are any errors, you can see the errors. It's an own custom error messages and the positions in pairs. So how the error starts and how the error ends. And some future plans, adding more pattern recognition from the message. If you want to describe the reasons, for example, getting more details, distinguish between asset and empty values. I'm not sure we can do this, but would be fine. And maybe more bindings, for example, Perl. And that's it.
So Mod Security 2, I've never used it personally, but I know it has an option to like a JSON export of the log lines. But I think that's very, very basic. It looks like what you've done is like a much more sensible way of cutting up the log lines. Is there any way, do you think, that you'd be able to put the work you've done and commit that back to the engine, assuming that the team would be happy to have that in? Because it seems like a really useful thing to have.
Yeah. But sorry, what is the question?
I'm just how does it compare to, I guess, the built-in JSON log exporter? Because I think it's very basic, isn't it? It doesn't pass.
Sorry, no. The log export, the JSON can be only in the case of audit log. But I'm working on error log, so you can access information from any kind of behavior of the engine, not just and the audit logs contains information only if a triggered rule contains some disruptive actions. For example, block or deny, the deny or reset or so similar. But I can show you in the dashboard. So this is the dashboard, okay? As you can see, we grouped the whole transaction with a table. So here is 3 lines from the mod security log. This is the first line. This is just a warning. But the second line is the access denied. So only the first rule, which is a critical, which has a critical severity. This is the 920600. It was enough to deny the full request. And the 980 is in class 5, so it's later. But what if I'm looking. So you can see here these log lines. You can't access these log lines through the audit logs, right? but we want to show these two, not just the audit logs, right? And it's very important. And this is why we choose the error log, not the audit logs. You're right. The ordered information can be accessed through the audit logs more easier. Yes, that's right. But not all information are there in the audit log, what we are looking for.
Yeah. In my experience also, there is a difference between audit log and error log is that you might have sensible information in the audit logs, which is something that you don't want to show to clients or similar.
Yeah.
So I think if you're targeting error logs, it's more like vanilla in many cases that it can bring you a lot of information without compromising the data you're logging.
For example.
Yeah.
But if you want to use the audit logs only for the dashboard, you can strip the unnecessary or unwanted information, so it's no problem. But the question is, what do you want to show to the users? For example, this is a rule 920345340. Maybe you see this. This is a digital web product also. You can see the details of the rule. But go back to here, and we can see what happens here. So this is the details of the log line in parsed. But this information isn't available in the audit logs. But what if a developer works on an application and you want to avoid to reach the blocking state? Just inform the developer, hey, please check in after every modification of your code that you can be sure that you do not triggering any kind of rules on. Yeah. Okay.
Have you talked about correlating it with the audit log? So you can create, for example, a unique ID and jump into the audit log doing a filter?
Yeah.
Sorry, let me repeat the question because it wasn't
Okay.
on the recording. So have you thought about correlating both? Because there's very valuable information in the error log, but for troubleshooting and for some of the reasons, going after the audit log, it's also the next step. So usually you can just click on the unique ID and do searches on the table.
Yeah, it was a plan that I think it's very far from the state, actually. But when we started to make the dashboard, we are talking about a lot of time. How should we process the logs? And the question is still, what do we want to show for ourselves, for our engineers, for our developers, and for our customers? For example, we're providing some VPSs for several customers, and they have own developers, and we just want to show the minimal necessary information about. For example, there is a plan that if a developer finds some entry on the dashboard, they just mark the line, and there will be a small form. So send this line to the administrator and ask them to make an exclusion. But yeah, the feature request is legal. We don't know how do we came from. Okay.
You showed the mechanism to display that logs are truncated. Have you thought about recompiling mod security with larger log size?
I think there is an important reason why the logs are truncated and why the fields are truncated. I'm not sure about the truncated fields are important. Maybe it's important. The other thing is it recorded now? Okay. No. No, I think it's. I usually send a pull request to the mod security repository, and sometimes I discuss with the developers in private or on GitHub. But it's very hard to make a request that they allowed. So it's I don't know why the discussion is sometimes it's very heavy. So I'm not sure we can make a pull request to here is this one. Do not truncate the fields. So, and I'm not an Apache contributor and developer, so maybe Apache also has some limit. I don't know. I have no idea. Or maybe Nginx also have some limits. I also don't know, and I didn't check it. I have to tell you.
Any more questions?
How do you integrate the previous component with the dashboard? Is it live streaming or do you have it in batch? And at what part do you enrich it with the GIP and ASM?
GDPR?
The IP, GIP and ASM value.
There's a GIP, yeah. GIP information comes when the log sends from the server, and the parser builds the structure, and after the structure is done, it has so this is the application, the MSC dashboard. It's a Python application. I'm using Battle. Maybe you know that Battle, Python Battle. Oh, it's a framework, HTTP framework, and there is a module which receives the line, uses the parser, and append the GYP informations to the log, and after that we store it in a SQL database. So it's later, it's not part of the parser. But I'm thinking about, I added optionally, maybe we can add, if there is some demand, I can add that too. Thanks. Okay.
Well, guys, got an extra 20 minutes to the next talk, so we can start the next one early, or how would you go?
We start the next one early, and the switch is the one.
Sure.
Because it's going to be lengthy, and I expect a lot of questions.
All right, brilliant, cool.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.